There are certain faces we encounter in life that refuse to leave us. Sometimes we meet them only once. Sometimes we never even learn their names, yet years later they remain vivid in our memories, while hundreds of other faces fade into nothing. I suppose that is what happened to me. The strange part is that when I first saw her, I didn't think she was extraordinary at all. She was simply a woman waiting for a train. At least that is what I believed. My name is Oliver Bennett, and 3 years ago I worked as an accountant in London. It wasn't a glamorous life. Every morning I woke before sunrise, squeezed myself into overcrowded trains, spent 10 hours staring at spreadsheets, and returned home exhausted. Like millions of others, there was comfort in the routine, predictability, order. The world made sense when every day followed the same pattern. Perhaps that's why what happened afterward affected me so deeply. It shattered that sense of order completely. The story began during the winter, a particularly cold winter, the kind that wraps London in endless fog and transforms every street lamp into a lonely beacon floating in darkness. I often worked late. Most evenings, I caught the final train departing from Street Alden Station. The station itself was old, very old, built sometime in the late 19th century according to the plaque near the entrance. Its brick walls were stained by time. Its iron beams creaked whenever the wind blew hard enough. Even during the day, the station possessed a strange melancholy. At night, it felt almost haunted, especially Platform 9. Platform 9 sat at the far end of the station, separated from the others by a long tunnel lined with aging lamps. Few passengers used it. Most people preferred the newer platforms closer to the main hall. As a result, Platform 9 often felt abandoned, forgotten. I never minded. In fact, I enjoyed the solitude. After spending an entire day surrounded by noise, silence felt like a luxury. One Thursday evening, shortly before midnight, I arrived at Platform 9 and immediately noticed her. She stood alone beneath one of the old lamps. A woman dressed in a deep red coat. The color stood out sharply against the gray station. Almost unreal. At first, I barely paid attention. Passengers came and went constantly. There was nothing unusual about a woman waiting for a train. I found a bench and sat down. The train wasn't due for another 10 minutes. I checked my phone, answered a few emails, scrolled through headlines. When I finally glanced up again, she was still standing there, completely motionless, looking down the tracks. The wind moved her dark hair slightly. Otherwise, she didn't move at all. Something about her seemed oddly sad, not visibly upset, not crying, just lonely. The sort of loneliness that settles into a person over many years. The train arrived. Passengers boarded. I boarded as well. Before stepping inside, I glanced back. The woman remained exactly where she was. She wasn't getting on. She simply watched the train. Then we departed. I forgot about her almost immediately, or at least I thought I did. The following night, she was there again, standing beneath the same lamp, wearing the same red coat, in the exact same position. I noticed her the moment I stepped onto Platform 9. A strange feeling tugged at me. Recognition. The kind you experience when spotting someone from a dream. I sat on the same bench. She remained standing. The train arrived. Passengers boarded. She didn't. Again. The situation was mildly unusual, but hardly alarming. Perhaps she was waiting for someone. Perhaps she enjoyed watching trains. Perhaps she simply liked standing there. People do strange things. Life teaches you not to question all of them. Yet over the following weeks, she continued appearing. Every single night. Always alone. Always waiting. Always wearing red. And always beneath the same lamp. Eventually, curiosity overcame me. One evening, I arrived earlier than usual. The station was nearly empty. The woman was already there. The distance between us couldn't have been more than 20 feet. For several minutes, I debated whether to approach her. Part of me felt ridiculous. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't dangerous. She was just a woman. Finally, I stood and walked toward her. As I approached, I noticed details I hadn't seen before. She appeared to be around 30 years old. Perhaps younger. Her features were elegant, almost timeless. Her skin was pale, not unhealthy, just remarkably fair. She looked like someone from another era, a painting rather than a person. When I was only a few steps away, she turned and looked directly at me. Her eyes were gray, the exact color of storm clouds. I opened my mouth, ready to introduce myself. ready to say something, anything. Then a station announcement crackled overhead. The sudden noise startled me. Instinctively, I looked away. The distraction lasted only a second, but when I looked back, she was gone. I blinked, confused. There was nowhere she could have gone. The platform stretched in only two directions, both clearly visible, yet she had vanished completely. I searched the station for several minutes. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself she must have entered one of the nearby corridors. The explanation felt weak, but it was all I had. After that, my interest in her only grew stronger. I began arriving earlier, watching for her, looking forward to seeing her. The realization embarrassed me. I wasn't some lovesick teenager. I was 29 years old. Yet there I was, adjusting my schedule to catch glimpses of a mysterious woman I had never spoken to. The strangest part was that I didn't feel attracted to her. Not exactly. It was something else. Something difficult to explain. She felt familiar, as though I had known her before, even though I was certain we had never met. One night I finally worked up the courage to speak with her again. The station was almost empty. Only a handful of passengers remained. The woman stood beneath her usual lamp. I walked directly toward her, determined not to lose my nerve. This time she saw me coming. A faint smile touched her lips. Not a friendly smile, not an unfriendly one either. A sad smile, the kind people wear when remembering something precious. "Excuse me," I said. My voice echoed softly through the station. She continued smiling. For a moment I thought she might respond. Then the approaching train horn sounded in the distance. The woman turned away, looking down the tracks, ignoring me completely. I felt oddly disappointed, almost foolish. The train arrived moments later. Passengers began boarding. I lingered near the door, watching her, waiting. She remained motionless, as always. Eventually I stepped onto the train. The doors prepared to close. The station lights reflected against the windows. Outside, the woman finally looked toward me. Our eyes met. For the first time, her expression changed. The sadness vanished, replaced by something else. Recognition, as though she had been waiting for this exact moment. Slowly, she raised one hand and waved. I stared back, confused. The train doors slid shut. The engine rumbled to life. The platform began moving away. Then she spoke. I couldn't hear her through the glass, but I saw her lips clearly. Every word, every syllable. My blood turned cold, because she wasn't saying goodbye. She wasn't saying good evening. She wasn't introducing herself. She was speaking my name. The train continued pulling away. The distance grew larger, yet I could still see her standing beneath the lamp, still smiling, still watching, and still mouthing the same word. Oliver, Oliver, Oliver. My heart hammered inside my chest. I had never spoken to her, never introduced myself, never worn a name tag. Nothing. There was absolutely no reason she should know who I was. The platform disappeared into darkness. The woman vanished from sight, but I couldn't stop staring through the window. A terrible feeling settled over me. Not fear, not yet. Something stranger. A feeling that my life had just changed, and that whatever was waiting for me on Platform 9 had been waiting for a very long time. I didn't sleep that night. No matter how many times I replayed the scene in my head, the outcome never changed. The woman in red had spoken my name. Not guessed it, not asked for it, known it. Every logical explanation I could think of eventually collapsed under its own weight. Perhaps she had overheard someone call me Oliver. Perhaps we had met years ago and I simply didn't remember. Perhaps there was some absurd coincidence at work. Yet, none of those explanations felt convincing. What haunted me most wasn't the fact that she knew my name. It was the way she said it. There had been recognition in her eyes. Not the recognition of a stranger finally learning who you are. The recognition of someone who had known you for a very long time. When morning finally arrived, I felt exhausted. The entire day passed in a haze. Numbers blurred together on spreadsheets. Colleagues spoke to me, but I barely listened. Every thought led back to Platform 9, back to the woman, back to those gray eyes. By evening, I found myself doing something ridiculous. I left work 2 hours early, not because I felt sick, because I wanted to get to the station before she did. I arrived at street, Alden Station, shortly after 9 o'clock. The station was still relatively busy. Commuters hurried through the main hall. Announcements echoed from distant platforms. The world felt normal, ordinary. I almost convinced myself that the previous night had been exaggerated by exhaustion. Then I walked through the tunnel leading toward Platform 9. The feeling returned immediately. A strange heaviness, as though I were crossing into a different place entirely. Platform 9 was nearly empty, and she was already there, standing beneath the same lamp, waiting. My heart skipped a beat. This time I didn't hesitate. I walked directly toward her. The woman turned before I reached her, almost as though she had been expecting me. A faint smile appeared on her lips. "Good evening," she said. Her voice was soft, beautiful, old-fashioned somehow. Not an accent, a tone, like dialogue from a forgotten film. I stopped a few feet away. "How do you know my name?" Her smile widened slightly. Instead of answering, she glanced toward the tracks. The trains are always late when it rains. I frowned. "Did you hear what I asked?" "Yes." "Then answer me." She looked back at me. For a moment, something almost sad passed through her eyes. Some questions take longer to answer than others. The response irritated me. Not because it was rude, because it felt intentional, like she was avoiding the truth. I folded my arms. "Who are you?" "Eleanor." The name sounded strangely elegant. "Eleanor, what?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just Eleanor." The station lights flickered overhead. For a brief second, shadows moved across her face. I noticed something peculiar. Despite the cold evening air, she wasn't wearing gloves. Her hands looked unusually pale, almost translucent. The observation sent an inexplicable chill through me. We stood in silence. Eventually I spoke again. "Do you come here every night?" "Yes." "Why?" She turned toward the tracks. "Because I'm waiting." The answer seemed obvious, yet something about the way she said it felt wrong. Not waiting for a train, waiting for something else, something important, something that had never arrived. Before I could ask another question, headlights appeared in the distance. The train approached. The familiar roar filled the station. Passengers began gathering near the edge of the platform. Eleanor stepped backward, returning to her usual position beneath the lamp. The conversation was over, at least for tonight. I boarded the train. As it departed, I looked through the window. She remained exactly where she always stood, watching, waiting, alone. Over the following weeks, speaking with Eleanor became part of my routine. Every evening I arrived early. Every evening she was already there. And every evening we talked. At first the conversations were simple. Weather, books, travel, the city, the strange beauty of old train stations. Eleanor possessed an extraordinary way of speaking, thoughtfully, carefully. Every word seemed chosen, rather than spoken. There was intelligence in her. And loneliness. A profound loneliness. The more time I spent with her, the more I wanted to understand her. Yet, she revealed almost nothing about herself. Whenever I asked personal questions, she redirected the conversation. Gracefully, effortlessly, like someone changing the course of a river. One evening, I finally noticed something strange. We had been talking for nearly 20 minutes. Passengers came and went around us. Several trains arrived. Several trains departed. Yet I never once saw another person acknowledge her existence. Not a glance, not a smile, nothing. It was as though she occupied a separate reality. At first I dismissed the thought. People were distracted, busy, absorbed in their own lives. But once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing. The next night, I tested my theory. A station employee walked directly past us while Eleanor was speaking. The man never looked at her, never acknowledged her. Nothing. The experience unsettled me deeply. A week later, I decided to ask, "Do people usually talk to you?" Eleanor smiled sadly. "Not anymore." The answer lingered in my thoughts long after I returned home. Then came the conversation that changed everything. It happened on a Thursday evening. Rain tapped gently against the station roof. The platform was nearly empty. Eleanor seemed unusually quiet, distracted. After several minutes of silence, she suddenly asked Oliver, "Do you know what happened here in 1958? I blinked. "What do you mean? At this station?" She looked toward the darkness beyond the tracks. There was an accident. A cold sensation settled inside me. I've never heard about it. Her eyes remained fixed on the distance. Most people haven't. The way she said those words made my stomach tighten. Before I could ask another question, the train arrived. And just like that, the conversation ended. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. 1958. The year echoed through my mind. The following afternoon, instead of going home after work, I visited the city library. The building occupied an old Victorian structure not far from the Thames. Its archives contained decades of local newspapers. I spent hours searching. At first, I found nothing. Then, shortly before closing time, I discovered it. October 1958. A headline stretched across an aging newspaper. Tragic rail disaster claims 37 lives. My pulse quickened. I began reading. A late-night passenger train had derailed near Street Alden Station. Dozens were killed. Many more injured. The accident dominated local news for weeks. I continued digging. Article after article. Photograph after photograph. Until I found a list of victims. Then my heart stopped. A photograph stared back at me from the yellowed newspaper page. The world seemed to fall silent. It was her. The same gray eyes. The same face, the same elegant features. There was no possibility of mistake. The image was older, grainier, yet unmistakable. The woman from Platform 9. The woman I had been speaking with for weeks. My hands began trembling. Beneath the photograph appeared a caption. I forced myself to read it. Eleanor Whitmore, 27, among those killed in the street. Alden Rail Disaster. October 12th, 1958. I stared at the words. Again, and again, and again. My mind refused to process them. This wasn't possible. Eleanor looked no older than 30. She spoke with me every evening. I had heard her voice, seen her smile, watched her walk. Yet, according to the newspaper, she had died nearly 70 years ago. A librarian approached quietly. Sir, I looked up. The woman smiled politely. We're closing. For several seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think. Finally, I folded the newspaper copy and slipped it into my bag. Outside, darkness had already fallen. Rain drifted through the city streets. The entire journey home felt unreal. When I finally reached my flat, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. Photographs, articles, records, evidence. The proof was undeniable. The woman waiting at Platform 9 had been dead for decades. I sat there until nearly 3 in the morning, staring at her photograph, trying desperately to find some explanation. Any explanation. But every road led to the same impossible destination. Eleanor Whitmore died on October 12, 1958. And tomorrow night, I was supposed to meet her again. For the first time since this strange story began, genuine fear entered my heart. Because if Eleanor was truly dead, then who exactly had been waiting for me at Platform 9? I didn't go to Platform 9 the following night, or the night after that. For the first time in weeks, I avoided Street Alden Station completely. I took buses, taxis, even walked home once through freezing rain. Anything to avoid seeing Eleanor again. Because if the newspaper was telling the truth, then the woman I had been speaking to every evening wasn't simply mysterious. She was impossible. And I wasn't prepared to face that reality. For days, I tried convincing myself there had to be another explanation. A relative who looked identical. An elaborate prank. A mistake in the archives. Anything. But every road led back to the same conclusion. Eleanor Whitmore had died in 1958, yet somehow she still stood beneath that lamp every night, waiting. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the guilt. Because despite everything, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I kept remembering the sadness in her eyes, the loneliness in her voice, the way she stared down the tracks as if expecting someone to arrive. 1 week passed, then another, and every night I dreamed about Platform 9. The dreams always ended the same way. Eleanor standing beneath the old lamp, looking at me, waiting. One evening I finally gave up. Running from the truth wasn't helping. Whatever Eleanor was, whatever mystery surrounded her, I needed answers. So after work, I returned to Street Alden Station. The moment I stepped into the tunnel leading toward Platform 9, a strange calm settled over me. Almost as though the station itself had been expecting my return. The platform appeared exactly as I remembered. The old lamps, the empty benches, the distant hum of trains. And there she was, standing beneath the same light, the same red coat, the same sad smile. When she saw me, something changed in her expression. Relief. Genuine relief. "You came back." Her voice was soft. I walked toward her slowly. "Eleanor." For the first time since we'd met, I didn't know what to say. She studied my face. "You know now." It wasn't a question. I nodded. "I found the newspaper." Silence lingered between us. The wind drifted across the platform. Far away, a train horn echoed through the darkness. Then Eleanor smiled, not happily, almost sadly. I wondered how long it would take. I stared at her. "Who are you?" Her eyes met mine, and this time she answered, "My name is Eleanor Whitmore." A chill ran through me. The woman in the newspaper, yes. The woman who died in 1958. She looked down the tracks. Yes. No hesitation. No denial. Just acceptance. The simplicity of it frightened me more than anything else. I swallowed hard. "Then how are you here?" For several moments she didn't answer. Then she pointed toward the tracks. "Walk with me." Together we moved slowly along the empty platform. The station seemed unusually quiet. Even time itself felt slower somehow. Finally, Eleanor began speaking. In 1958, I was 27 years old. Her voice sounded distant, like someone recalling a dream. "I came here every evening." She smiled faintly. "I was waiting for someone. I already knew. Or at least I thought I did. The man you loved." She nodded. His name was never spoken, yet I could feel how important he had been. He left to serve overseas after the war. Her eyes remained fixed on the darkness. When he finally came home, he promised he would meet me here. Platform 9. The realization struck immediately. Eleanor continued. "He wrote letters every week." A faint smile appeared. They were beautiful letters. For the first time since I'd met her, genuine warmth entered her expression. He always ended them the same way. What did he write? She looked at me. "Wait for me." The words lingered between us. Simple. Heartbreaking. He was supposed to arrive on October 12th, 1958. My chest tightened. The date from the newspaper. The night of the accident. Eleanor nodded. The train never arrived. Silence followed. I didn't need details. The tragedy was already written across her face. Did he die? For a long time she didn't answer. Then she whispered, "I never knew." The confession shattered something inside me. 70 years. 70 years waiting without knowing. 70 years trapped between hope and grief. I finally understood why she remained here. Not because she couldn't leave, because she wouldn't. A distant rumble echoed through the station, another train passing somewhere far away. Then Eleanor looked at me differently, more carefully, as though deciding something. "There is a reason I spoke to you." I frowned. "What do you mean?" A strange sadness entered her eyes. "Because of who you are." The statement caught me off guard. What does that mean? Eleanor reached into her coat, slowly, carefully. From inside, she removed a folded photograph. The edges were yellow with age. She handed it to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The world stopped. The photograph showed a young Eleanor standing beside a handsome man in military uniform. I recognized him immediately. Not because I'd ever met him, but because I'd seen his photographs my entire life. Family albums, picture frames, childhood memories. The young man standing beside Eleanor was my grandfather, Thomas Bennett. I couldn't breathe. My knees nearly gave out. No. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. He never came. The platform blurred around me. Everything suddenly made sense. The familiarity. The feeling I'd known her somehow. The reason she knew my name. She had known my family long before I was born. My grandfather had died 5 years earlier. A quiet man. A kind man. Yet there had always been a sadness about him. A sadness nobody could explain. Now I understood. He had carried Eleanor's memory his entire life. And somehow, she had carried his. I stared at the photograph, speechless. Then I remembered something. A box. An old wooden box stored among my grandfather's belongings after his death. A box nobody in the family had understood. Letters. Photographs. Keepsakes. I had inherited it. My heart raced. Wait here. Eleanor smiled sadly. I always do. The next evening I returned. In my hands was the wooden box. I hadn't slept. The contents had kept me awake all night. Inside were dozens of letters, every one addressed to Eleanor, none ever sent. My grandfather had written them throughout his life, for decades. The final letter rested on top, written shortly before he died. I handed it to her. Neither of us spoke. The station seemed frozen in time. Eleanor opened the envelope carefully. Her hands trembled. Then she began reading. Tears formed almost immediately. One fell onto the paper, then another. I looked away. The moment felt too private, too sacred. Eventually she folded the letter, holding it against her chest. For several seconds, she simply stood there, eyes closed, smiling through tears. What did he say? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. He said he never stopped loving me. My throat tightened. The old station seemed quieter than ever. Then, something extraordinary happened. A light appeared down the tracks, brighter than any train I had ever seen. Warm, golden, beautiful. The rails seemed to shimmer beneath it, the platform filled with a gentle glow. Eleanor looked toward the approaching light, and smiled. Not sadly, not wistfully, happily, for the first time. The train slowed as it entered the station. Its design looked unfamiliar, old-fashioned, elegant, like something from another era. The doors opened, and a man stepped onto the platform, young, handsome, dressed in a dark coat, exactly as he appeared in the photograph. My grandfather, or rather, the young man he once had been, Thomas Bennett. Eleanor began crying openly. The man smiled, the kind of smile reserved for reunions that should have happened long ago. He extended his hand. She took it immediately. Neither spoke. Words weren't necessary. 70 years of waiting had already said everything. Together, they turned toward the train. Just before boarding, Eleanor glanced back at me. Thank you, Oliver. I couldn't answer. Emotion had stolen my voice. She smiled. Then she and Thomas stepped aboard. The doors closed softly. The train began moving. The golden light grew brighter, 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 until it vanished completely into the darkness beyond the station. And then it was gone. The platform fell silent. The old lamp continued glowing. The wind continued blowing. Yet, something had changed. The sadness was gone. The waiting was over. The following night I returned. Platform 9 was empty. No woman in red. No mysterious figure beneath the lamp. Nothing. Weeks passed. Then months. She never returned. Yet sometimes very late at night, when the station is quiet and the fog rolls in from the river, I still find myself watching the tracks. And every now and then, just for a moment, I catch sight of a distant train passing through the darkness. A train that doesn't appear on any schedule. A train filled with warm golden light. And seated beside one of its windows are two figures holding hands. A woman in red, and the man who finally came home. After 70 years of waiting. At last, together.